You want to know which wide receivers you should start in week 7 to help you win? We're going to go game by game, breaking down every receiver that matters to help you make those lineup decisions. You're going to need some help because there are 6 teams with a bye in week 7. That's the Bengals, the Cowboys, Jets, Panthers, Texans, and Titans. Now, there are some receivers that you can start and don't even think twice. These are must starts this week. Jamar Chase, Cooper Kupp, Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Keenan Allen, and Devontae Adams. Before we get to those Week 7 matchups, we have a quick announcement.
Introducing our new app, Draft Lane. Connect with us anytime for your start sit, waiver questions, and more. We can instantly access your roster and tell you the exact right moves to make. Access your past leagues and climb the Draft Lane leaderboard and see how you stack up against your competitors. Both Yahoo and Sleeper are supported. Download Draft Lane today and use the promo code ENDGAME to receive $10 in your account. Available on the App Store and Google Play.
Thursday night starts with the Jaguars against the Saints. Let's talk Calvin Ridley. Just when it looked like he was coming back to be a stud, kind of a disappointing week in week 6. What does he do against this Saints defense?
Yeah, I'm not feeling a big Ridley game. Should have been a big game last week. Didn't happen. But I still think, especially this week, if you've got Calvin Ridley, for the most part, you're starting him.
Yeah, he's becoming one of those more annoying receivers where you feel like he should always have a big game and it's just up or down. You never know, but you can't keep that upside on your bench. Don't love the matchup, but like you said, I think if I have him, pretty much I'm starting him. And Christian Kirk, somehow this year, has become the more predictable, consistent receiver. Is he a guy you just have to keep in your lineup?
This week, I think you do. I love this matchup for Christian Kirk. I'm going to dive into it a little deeper in another video, but for now, I'll just say, if you got Kirk, start him.
Agree. You got Kirk, you can feel pretty good. He's definitely a strong start. And then Chris Olave did bounce back last week. Although he didn't find the end zone, has some good yardage. Do you think he does it again?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not particularly scared of this Jacksonville secondary. The guy is big play, upside every time he's on the field. If you got Olave, start him.
And hard to keep that kind of potential on your bench. So for the most part, you got him, you start him. Rashid Shaheed did have a big game, although it was just big plays. But I mean, that's kind of what he is. Does he pull out a big play this week?
He could. If you're desperate, it's all or nothing, home run type of swing. But if you're desperate, you can start him.
Kind of the same thing every week with him. Yeah, boom or bust. Take your pick. If you need him, you can roll him out. If not, look elsewhere. And then there's Michael Thomas, the polar opposite. Take your 6-7 points and be happy with it, or what? I mean, is there more upside here?
No, there's very little upside here unless he somehow magically finds the end zone. I really don't want to start Michael Thomas this week.
Lions taking on the Ravens in Baltimore. There's probably going to be a little hype building around Jamison Williams because he did catch that long touchdown. Is this the start of something or just one play?
I'm going to go with just one play. He only ran 9 routes the entire game. He's kind of like a Rashid Shaheed light for me in the sense that, yeah, if you want to put him in your lineup and swing for the fences, he could boom, but he also could do nothing.
You took the words out of my mouth. I was just going to say, Rashid Shaheed, we just talked about him, same guy. Look, maybe you don't think it's the same guy, but I bet you by year's end in fantasy, same guy. So upside, risky flex, and that's it. What about Josh Reynolds? He's still been somewhat involved. This Baltimore matchup isn't scary, but what's his upside?
I mean, again, not a lot of upside here, but there's a lot of teams on bye. We've got some injuries. If you need him, you can start him, but more of a floor play.
There you go. He could be flexed if you're desperate. But, like you said, you can't get too excited. What about Zay Flowers on the other side? Finally scored his first NFL touchdown. Where do you put him against this Lions defense?
Yeah, this is a tough defense. They've been playing really good, but I think it would be very hard to bench Zay Flowers this week, so I think I'm still rolling with him.
Yeah, I mean, obviously can't feel nearly as good as we did last week against Tennessee, but he's startable because he's the number one guy there. He's getting targeted at a high rate. He's got a floor at least, so don't love him, but he is at least kind of in low-end wide receiver 3 territory. Raiders at the Bears. Yes, you should still be starting Devontae Adams despite everything. Now, we might not see Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback, though. If it's the backup Brian Hoyer, what does that mean for Jacoby Myers.
Yeah, can't feel great, but at the same time, do you really want to bench him? I will say the Bears secondary got a lot of players back last week, and they looked a bit better. I mean, maybe that was just the Vikings without Jefferson, but man, Jacoby Myers without Jimmy G, maybe Brian Hoyer, maybe they go back to the rookie, who knows, but I think he's still startable, but I don't love him this week.
I mean, he does take a hit, but I will say this. I don't feel like, since it's Hoyer and not the rookie O'Connell, I don't feel like it's a massive downgrade at quarterback here like some other situations, including the one we're about to talk about. I still think Jacoby Myers is solid. I mean, I can't say I feel much worse about him than a guy like Zay Flowers this week, to be honest. Now, as far as DJ Moore goes, very different. We could see Justin Fields out this week, maybe longer, who knows. The backup is rookie Division II prospect Tyson Bagent. What do you think DJ Moore can do?
Man, this is so unfortunate. He was looking so good. It looked like he was just an every week auto start. And now it's like, can you even start him? I mean, do you really want to trust him? It'd be hard to bench DJ Moore this week, but I can't consider him more than a wide receiver 3. So if you need him, you can start him. That's where I'm at with him.
I mean, only because we know Moore has good run after catch ability. I mean, he's really good at getting separation and getting open. And who else is he going to throw to? Bagent. I mean, I think Moore gets the targets. He's not an outright bench, but man, I really don't want to have to start him. Browns taking on the Colts. Now, Cleveland might be getting their starting quarterback back in Week 7. It sounds like Deshaun Watson will give it a go. So is Amari Cooper a full go? Look, Amari Cooper went over 100 yards with P.J. Walker.
Yeah, Amari Cooper is a must start this week. I'll talk about him in another video as well, but man, love Amari Cooper this week. Start him.
Yeah, I mean, I would say after what we saw against the Niners, even if Watson doesn't come back, I'm still going to start Cooper. Yet another backup quarterback. We got Gardner Minshew slinging it to Michael Pittman. Look, Pittman was still pretty good last week. Does he continue it this week?
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think they're going to have to throw it 50-plus times. It's one of the best. If not, honestly, they are the best defense by a pretty wide margin. I still think Pittman is startable, but more of a floor play this week.
Not feeling good about Pittman. Like I said, I think that Cleveland defense is legit. I don't think Gardner Minshew is legit. I mean, he'll get the volume, so he's startable. I'm putting him just like a tick above DJ Moore. Both very risky this week. And so what does that mean for Josh Downs?
Yeah, I can barely start Pittman. I cannot start Josh Downs. You'd have to be very desperate this week, not starting him.
No, I got to pass on Downs. I know he scored last week, but the yardage wasn't there. Against this defense, I'm not doing it. Bills taking on the Patriots. This really decimated Patriots defense with all those injuries. What does Gabe Davis do?
Well, he didn't do anything last week, and I liked him, but I like him even more this week. If possible, I am putting Gabe Davis in my lineup.
I do feel better about Gabe this week. You know, he's one of those players that you don't really know what you're going to get. No guarantees here, but I do like his upside, so I say he's flexible. And talked about that defense. The Patriots offense and the receiving core specifically is probably even more banged up. So that meant Kendrick Bourne got, I think, 10 catches last week, something like that. Is he a guy now you have to consider?
Nah, didn't we see this from Kendrick Bourne in week 1 and then he disappeared again? Like, this is too deep for me. I'm not doing it.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's the worst choice because, again, target volume, although I know what you're saying, that volume could quickly disappear. Like, if they still have all those injuries, he's at least an upside flex play. Risky, but you might need that. Commanders taking on the Giants. It's time to play. Guess which Washington player gets targeted this week? Terry McLaurin actually didn't do too bad in week 6. So how do we feel about him now?
I never know how to feel about Terry McLaurin. Like, you should be feeling good. It's the Giants, but it's also Terry McLaurin and the Commanders and Sam Howell. But this week, I mean, in this matchup, you're probably starting him.
Yeah, it's the Giants. No reason to be scared. I feel like the offensive coordinator there, Eric Bieniemy, he specifically picks a player or two to just focus on, and that's the guy he's going to go through, you know, trying to attack the defense. I don't know who it's going to be this week, but I think McLaurin, I consider him a wide receiver 3. And then what about Curtis Samuel? Talked him up a little bit this past week. He's been somewhat consistent at least.
Yeah, and I like him again this week out of the slot against this Giants defense. I mean, again, not a guy like you have to start. Don't force him into your lineup. But if you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, I feel pretty good. I mean, surprising. A lot of people don't even realize he's actually a top 25 wide receiver in PPR leagues right now. Not a guy who's going to win you your week, but I think I feel pretty solid about him in week 7. And then there's Jahan Dotson, who now isn't even getting balls thrown his way. I mean, is there any hope?
No, hard pass on Jahan Dotson.
Don't know what happened here. Looked so great in the preseason, but you can't play him. And on the Giants side, look, Wan'Dale Robinson, maybe he is becoming a thing. What do you think?
Yeah, he's a thing. He's a thing you could flex in a PPR league if you're desperate.
Well, I will say this. The Commanders do give up a lot of points to wide receivers. Might be interested in Robinson a little bit this week. Again, only as a flex and only because I'm looking for a floor. But I think Robinson isn't the worst pick. And then last week, the leading receiver for the Giants was Darius Slayton. Again, because it's Washington, maybe?
Maybe. Another guy like Shaheed, yeah, you want to swing for the fences, go for it, put him in as your flex, but understand you could get nothing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's no floor here. And look, we actually don't really know for sure who the quarterback will be for the Giants. So it's a possibility. I'll just put it that way. Falcons at Bucks. Let's start with Drake London. Had his biggest game so far of the season. But this is a different matchup. Now going against the Bucks on the road. What do you think?
I think you should still feel pretty good about him. I mean, look, Amon-Ra St. Brown just torched him. Now, granted, Amon-Ra St. Brown plays quite a bit out of the slot, but still, I mean, this secondary hasn't been elite this year. They don't scare me. Drake London getting more involved, Desmond Ridder throwing the ball more. I think Drake London is a solid start this week.
I loved London last week, picked him to boom. I don't love him this week, but I still put him in wide receiver 3 territory. Like you said, at least we've seen now he does have some sort of a floor. And then Mike Evans finally had a down game. Does he bounce back?
I don't know. We've seen the Falcons shut down number 1 wide receivers, A.J. Terrell. But I still feel like Mike Evans is a guy hard to bench. If you got him, you're probably starting him.
Yeah, I feel like we may have seen the real Baker Mayfield come back to earth in this Bucs offense. But yeah, Evans still does have some upside. It's not a terrible matchup, so kind of a wide receiver 3 in most 12-team leagues. And then there's Chris Godwin. Well, Godwin's numbers actually weren't bad at all last week. Do you think maybe he's coming on a little bit?
I don't know if it's so much that he's coming on. I mean, remember before the bye, Mike Evans got hurt, and then last week, Marshawn Lattimore shut down Mike Evans. But look, A.J. Terrell could shut down Mike Evans again this week, and that means more Chris Godwin. So because Mike Evans may get shut down by A.J. Terrell, and the Falcons actually do give up a lot of points out of the slot, I like Chris Godwin this week.
Yeah, I think I will lean Godwin over Evans. Again, not a must start, but I think he could be pretty solid. Steelers going to take on the Rams this week, coming out of the bye, and they should have Deontay Johnson back. He's declared that he's going to play, so is he a guy you put immediately back in your lineup?
I think so. I mean, not a guy that has tremendous upside, but if you need a floor in a PPR league, Deontay Johnson will work.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to get too excited about anybody in the Steelers offense. I actually will say this. I was surprised to look at the Rams actually been pretty tough against receivers in terms of fantasy points allowed, but there is a floor here. Look, a lot of teams on bye, injuries are happening, so you can play Deontay. And then what does this mean for George Pickens?
You got to worry a little bit that he goes back to just running go routes and this offense is just terrible, but he's got upside. A lot of teams on bye. If you need him, you can start him.
Yeah, Pickens is kind of a boom-bust play, as always. We know this. The volume might not be there. And like I said, the Rams, surprisingly tough. They've only given up 1 touchdown to receivers. So I can't love Pickens this week. But, you know, if you're looking for a big play, potential upside, he's still there. And then now that Cooper Kupp is back in LA, you might start worrying about Puka. Did not have a good game at all. What do you do with him against the Steelers here? Is it time to consider benching Puka?
No, definitely not. I still like Puka. This is a great matchup for him. Don't give up on Puka yet. If you got him, start him.
Yeah, although if you were going to sell high, the time to do that was a couple of weeks ago. Right now, not only do you hold him, I think you have to start him. I actually think this is a big bounce back for Puka, so I'm calling him a must start. Cardinals going to take on the Seahawks. Let's start with Hollywood Brown. How do you feel about him against the Seattle defense?
I mean, you can't feel great. Witherspoon just shut down Jamar Chase, and Hollywood is no Jamar Chase, not to mention Josh Dobbs crashing back down to earth hard. Look, I can't say you have to bench Hollywood this week because, again, you might need him. But for me this week, he's only a start him if you need him.
Yeah, I mean, he still is the kind of player who can make things happen on his own, but I'm starting to worry. Like you said, Josh Dobbs is starting to look a little more like what we expected. So he's playable, but not somebody I'm going to force in my lineup. And then there's Michael Wilson, the rookie. Decent numbers last week. What do you think he does this week?
Yeah, I mean, he's always going to be the same for me. Desperation flex only.
I think he's got some potential. You know, I kind of mentioned this last week. He's a guy who has been so far in his young career much better against teams that play heavy zone defense. And Seattle plays zone at the second highest rate. This could be a game where Wilson does again do something to make him startable, but I'm not expecting 2-touchdown game or anything. So a flex if you need. And then there's Rondale Moore. Is he in the conversation for a flex?
Yeah, I actually like this matchup for him out of the slot, but I mean, not a lot of upside here at all. Nothing more than a desperate floor flex in PPR leagues.
I thought they might get him more involved because of James Conner being out. You know, this lack of a running game, mixing and matching all these guys. Didn't really see it against Seattle. Sure, there's some potential, but I mean, a deep flex option. DK Metcalf, on the other hand, never a deep, desperate option. Do you feel really good about him against Arizona?
I do. This is a great matchup for DK Metcalf. I think we could finally see the DK Metcalf boom game this week. If you got him, start him.
I hope so. I'm going to find out, though. DK definitely a strong start this week. What about Tyler Lockett? I mean, you can't feel too bad about him either.
No, I like DK better, and I'll explain why in our boom video, but I also like Tyler Lockett this week. Start him as well.
Agreed. Definitely a good start. And then what about Jackson Smith and Jigba? Finally, after the bye, saw a little bit of a bump. It wasn't huge, but could we see him even more involved?
We could, but I don't want him in my lineup until I see it. So stash him if you got him, but don't play him yet.
Gonna agree. Let's not expect some huge breakout game because they still have Metcalf and Lockett. So stash, but don't start. Then we got the Packers taking on the Broncos in Mile High. Let's start with Christian Watson. This is a guy that's hard to bench.
Yeah, hard to bench, especially when they're playing the Broncos. Look, he's very volatile, but he can also win you your week. I think if you got Watson, you got to find a way to start him this week.
I mean, not only did he come back healthy, but then had a week to rest, got involved right away. You got to feel good about him, period. And now you're telling me he's facing the Broncos defense? I mean, to me, you've got to start him. And then I'm looking at the early lines and underdog. 50 yards, that's it. If he goes over 50.5 yards, then you can win some money. So I'm taking that. I'm smashing higher on Christian Watson. And you can combine that with the new customer special if you haven't tried underdog yet. Thursday night's game, Derek Carr just needs 1 yard. If Derek Carr gets a yard and you took the higher on that, you can combine it with the Watson pick or any of the other picks we like that we talk about in our videos or anything you're feeling. And I'm not just talking NFL, any sport. You combine those two picks, you can triple your money right away, and you already can double your money just for signing up. That's right, up to $500, you get a 100% deposit match. You use promo code ENDGAME. All of those things are in effect. So if you haven't tried it out, now is the perfect time. So then let's talk about Romeo Doubs. Is he a guy you can consider based on this matchup?
I think you can. We got 7 teams on bye. He should get involved. He should get targets. Jordan Love has to be better against Denver, I hope. I think Romeo Doubs is a guy you can consider as like a wide receiver 3.
Look, Doubs is a guy I was interested in all offseason, drafted him in a couple of places, was looking really good for 4 weeks, and then all of a sudden, week 5, it was crash and burn for Jordan Love, and Doubs only had 1 catch. I'm just forgetting it. That was 1 game. I'm going to focus on the fact that he's getting targeted. He's a good receiver. This is a great matchup. I think he's a really good start this week. And then there are the Broncos. Let us start with Courtland Sutton, who has actually been pretty solid this year.
Yeah, he has been, but this Packers secondary is good. Jair Alexander is healthy. Desperation start only.
Yeah, I do worry that, if Jair Alexander is going to give his attention to somebody, it's probably going to be Sutton. So can't feel great about him. If you're hoping for a touchdown, maybe, but I'm going to try to not start Sutton. And then Jerry Jeudy, who's been in the news for not so great reasons, pretty much called out by Steve Smith Sr., not living up to expectations. Is there any reason to start Jerry Jeudy?
No, you have to just be beyond desperate. Hard pass on Jerry Jeudy.
Definitely passing. Chargers at the Chiefs. Let's talk about Josh Palmer. Still the number 2 guy in that passing offense. So can he do something in KC?
This is a tough secondary, but he is the number 2 target. He's got Justin Herbert. There's 7 teams on bye. But in this matchup, I can only put him in the start him if you need him category.
Yeah, I mean, man, some tough matchups here coming out the bye for the Chargers. Going Dallas and then KC. Don't feel great about him. Flex or stream if you need to. And then Quentin Johnston might still be waiting for that breakout. Are you going to wait with it in your lineup?
Definitely not. Way too risky.
No, thank you. I'll pass. Now, Rashee Rice, on the other hand, I mean, I don't know if there is a number 1 receiver in KC, but I think he's the guy I'm most interested in. Is he a guy you're going to start?
Not a guy I feel like I have to start, but you got to like what you're seeing. It's another good matchup. So I'm going to put him in that if you need him, you can start him category that I feel good about.
Well, this week, with so many teams out of action, I'm going to bump him up a little bit more to wide receiver 3 range. Again, talking about like a typical 12-man league. It's a great matchup against this Chargers secondary. He's been involved more and more, getting those good quality downfield targets, and Justin Watson is out. So I actually like Rice a lot this week. Not an absolute must start, but I think a very good one. And then Kadarius Toney, I mean, give him credit. He's hung around. He's still getting some action. Can he do something against this Chargers defense?
I mean, that's the only reason why, because it's a Chargers. So if you're desperate, you can flex them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we're ever going to see the Kadarius Toney people dreamt of, but sure, you could roll him out this week. And then what could and should be the game of the week, we get the Dolphins taking on the Eagles. So Jalen Waddle had himself a nice game against the Panthers. Can he do it against the Eagles?
I think so. This Eagles secondary giving up a lot to wide receivers. I think if you got Jalen Waddle, you start him.
Yeah, although Waddle has fallen out of the no doubt every week must start, I mean, I'm going to find out what he can do in my lineup. I'm keeping Waddle in. But then Devontae Smith for the Eagles, there's some legit concern here. It's been a couple of weeks now. A.J. Brown is just dominating, and Smith hasn't. I mean, what do you think?
You know what? I'm going to find out in my lineup. He's too good of a player. Had 11 targets last week. He's going to bounce back. This could be a shootout. I'm going to put Smith back in my lineup.
Yeah, it really should have been last week. Like you said, he got the targets. He had a couple of bad drops. I don't know what is going on there, but he's in the Eagles. He's got Jalen Hurts. He's getting targets. This is not a tough matchup compared to the Jets defense. I think you have to keep starting him. And on Monday night, the Niners taking on the Vikings. Deebo Samuel may not be in the lineup because of that shoulder issue. If he plays, do you risk it?
Yeah, I think you have to, unless he's not practicing all week, game time decision kind of thing. But it's a Vikings, so I think if Deebo plays, you play him.
Yeah, a lot of questions here, this whole offense. But, I mean, I guess if he plays, then you should feel good enough about him. And look, if CMC doesn't play, that's even better. It might be a big Deebo week. So if Deebo is a full go, yeah, keep him in there. And then what about Brandon Ayuk? I'm not sure. Does it even matter if Deebo plays here?
Yeah, another guy like Devonta Smith had double-digit targets and barely caught any of them, but that was Cleveland. This is the Vikings. I think if you got Ayuk, you got to start him.
Yeah, this could go back to being a huge Ayuk week. I think he's an absolute must-start. And then Jordan Addison did step up a little bit last week. That was Chicago. This is San Francisco. Where does he rank?
Yeah, he's in that wide receiver 3 range for me. I mean, he's still a decent start because he's technically the number 1 guy here, but it is San Francisco. But they are at home, so I think for the most part, you're probably starting him.
Yeah, I do think he's still a solid start. Last week, even against the Bears, we thought, yeah, I mean, you didn't have to play him. This week, I definitely don't have to, but I still think you can. And KJ Osborne, I think I'll back off of him enough to say only if you're desperate.
Exactly. Desperation only.
All right, that's our take on all the wide receivers that matter for week 7. You want to know about running back, quarterback, tight end, and everything else fantasy related? We got it all here on this playlist. Check it out.